following is a paid advertisement program provided by Premier Investments and Wealth Management. An airing of the program is not to be considered an endorsement or recommendation. The opinions expressed are those of the hosts, guests and callers and not necessarily of KFXR or iHeartMedia. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. The opinions voiced in this show are for general information purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Premier Investments and Wealth Management and LPL Financial do not provide tax advice. Please consult your tax professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance referenced is historical and is not a guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal.
The views and opinions of the show are those of Premier Investments and Wealth Management and their guests alone and do not reflect any other entities. The information in the following program should not be construed as an offer to sell and is not intended to replace the advice of a qualified tax advisor or legal counsel. The statements in this program do not reflect those of LPL Financial, Premier Investments of Wealth Management, or its affiliates. Hello and welcome to the Premier Investments and Financial program. My name is Doug Wagner. I'm going to give you a website to go to here in just a matter of moments so that you can find out more about what Premier Investments and Wealth Management can do for you. But right now I want to introduce the owner and wealth advisor at Premier Investments and Wealth Management with over 20 years of experience in the financial services industry. He's an accredited investment fiduciary and a Dave Ramsey SmartVestor Pro. He is the big kahuna, Roger Abel.
It never gets old. I'm going to say it every time. It never gets old.
That's awesome.
How did you even come up with that?
You know what? Your nickname had been the Rook, but it's like, no,
Rook.
When you're the owner now, you're the big kahuna.
Well, it's ironic. So I started with Premier in 2003, actually. I started in the industry in 2002. And when I met Jeff and Jonas and all the guys, they just nicknamed me the Rook.
Right.
So you're right. For years, it'd been the Rook up until like 6 months ago. And apparently now, I'm the big kahuna.
Big kahuna.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if that's good or bad.
It's good. I'm a Hawaii guy, so.
Well, I know you you're always hanging tan and wearing Hawaiian shirts on the show, making me. I mean, today you got like a
got my Charleston windbreaker on, so yeah, it's nice and easy.
Nice.
I love that. I appreciate you coming in here to talk about financial advice. If you go to premieriwm.com, what you can do is you can answer the questions when you click Get Started, dear listener. On Talk Radio 1190 and 1190talkradio.com. Go to premieriwm.com, click Get Started, and start on your process to get that Premier Vision doc. All right, the lifespan from years ago, I remember my father, I talked about this. My father would have been 102 this year. He died just prior to 90 years old. But back in the early parts of the 20th century, life for most people was nasty, short, and brutish. I mean, it was something because the sanitation didn't exist like we have now. Medical science didn't exist as we have it now. And just pure knowledge. And the people were eking out and scratching out a living in dark corners of the world. Now, since the Enlightenment and the ability of, farmers across the world to feed people around the world so nobody has the reason to starve to death, and modern technology, lifespans are going up, including in the United States. They fell back a little while, Roger, after COVID, but now roughly 8,000 days is what people are expecting, as far as the time that they're going to be living, including retirement. Retirement's not an end. In fact, it's a new chapter, and I'll shut up after I say this, and you'll say thank you. But I'm going to say this. Before I met you and the folks at Premier Investments and Wealth Management, I thought that when you retired, you just stopped investing because your whole point was to push everything up. It's like Monopoly. You push it up right up to the end, and then you're done.
Yeah. Good point. And lots of people believe that. And I think part of the reason we rolled this outline out today is when you start thinking about things in days versus years, it seems a lot longer. So the average retiree, so assuming you retire at 65, live to be 85, that's about 8,000 days. arguably, I actually believe people should be preparing for 10 to 11,000 days in retirement. And the whole point of the thought there is, Doug, you're right. People think, oh, I'm retired, I can't take risk.
Yeah.
Well, that's not true. You're going to have to live in retirement for 11,000 days.
Yeah.
So your time horizon is 30 years. It is not 3 days until you say I'm not working. And people who are getting ready to pull the plug need to do a really good job of having their financial plan, having a bucket strategy, so they're not, tied to, not emotionally tied to what the markets are doing, but also I think they need to recognize the phases of retirement. Okay. Because it is different. You're going to spend a different amount of money in the different phases. And ironically, I've talked about 3 phases of retirement, which is the go, the slow go, the no go.
Right.
There's a group much smarter than me that has come up with 4.
Yeah.
And it's MIT. They're all smarter than me, Doug.
Yeah.
They might not have as good of a voice for radio. They might not have a face for TV, but they are smarter than me. MIT Age Lab came up with what we call the 4 phases of retirement. Okay. And the first one is, I'll name all 4, then we'll hit on all of them if that sounds good.
That's
but
fine.
First one's honeymoon phase, big decision phase, navigating longevity, and the solo journey.
Talk to me about the honeymoon phase. It's just exactly when retirement, what it is, you just get retired and now you're ready to embark on this luscious life that you've prepared for.
That's what people think, and hopefully you're part of the 4% that experiences that.
Okay.
But the
Only
honeymoon
4%.
phase is, the honeymoon phase is what everybody thinks. Like, oh, we got married. This is the first part. It's really fun for a certain period of time. Mm-hmm. But studies show us that 66% of people have challenges when they're adapting in retirement.
Right.
And I really think this is the phase people should spend a lot of time well in advance thinking out what they're going to do. I have a client who lives in a northern state. They live in Iowa. And he told me, I'm going to golf every day. That's what I'm going to do in retirement. And for the people in Texas who don't know anything about Iowa, you can't golf in Iowa in December, in January, in February.
Unless you're inside, which doesn't have the same feel.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he retired in May, and he golfed all summer.
Yeah.
Then he took a job delivering flowers because he was bored.
Yeah.
He didn't think out this honeymoon phase very well.
But here's the thing, Roger, you made it so he was adaptable to it. That's the whole point, is that if you get stuck in this, I'm going to etch this in stone and here's what's going to happen, and you just pound yourself into it to the point where you're just slamming your head against the wall rather than being adaptable.
Yeah, you have to adapt to all of this. And think about what happens, though, the day you retire. You are breaking habits you've established from the time you were 5 years old.
Yeah.
What does everybody do? You go to kindergarten. You get up, you take a shower, you eat breakfast, you go to school. Then school turns into work. You come home, you go to bed. You're breaking that habit because no longer do you have to get up and take a shower and go to school or work. It's all optional.
Yeah.
So it's hard for people to break all of these habits they've established over 30 and 40 years. I think it's one of the phases that is very difficult for people. It's a psychological shift, not just with lifestyle, but money, right? I mean, from the time you had your first job, you had this 401k.
Right.
Can't touch it. Can't touch it. 30 years, you can't touch it.
Right.
And now they're like, oh yeah, by the way, today, you get to touch it.
Oh, no.
Right. And for some people, there's 2 paradigms here. For some people, it's paralyzing.
Yeah.
For other people, it's curse. And the curse people, it's because they haven't figured out what their budget is, and they're going to blow through it. And I've watched it happen time and time and time again.
That's why it's so critical to get in touch with a wealth advisor. And for me, it's Premier Investments in Wealth Management at premieriwm.com.
Do you ever feel like your financial goals are just out of reach? It's time to take control of your future with Premier Investments in Wealth Management, your partner in financial independence. Imagine a financial plan that's as individual as you are. At Premier Investments and Wealth Management, our team of experienced advisors will work closely with you to create a roadmap tailored to your dreams, whether it's buying a home, retiring comfortably, or starting a business. We believe in transparency and education. We'll help simplify complex financial concepts, provide clear guidance, and empower you to make informed decisions. Financial wellness is within your grasp. Visit www.premieriwm.com to schedule a meeting with an experienced advisor today.
Here on Talk Radio 1190 and 1190talkradio.com, really the difference is the way that I've learned that they see investing. Much of it is psychological, is really what it comes down to it. And you talked about that here, Roger, the idea that you're breaking routines that began in kindergarten. For me, it's like when I get out of a routine, I revert to something separate. I'll sleep for 20 hours just because I haven't slept and so have a good sleep in so long. But you can't do that every single day. I want you to go to premieriwm.com to check out the website. A lot of downloadable information over there. If you have a question, you can leave it in the contact portion. Now, we don't want to belabor the point with the honeymoon phase, but at the same time, there are a lot of things that change in addition to the routines. Your relationships change too because you spend a lot more time with people.
When you're working, you've seen the same people for a number of years. 37% of people that retire, they actually miss the daily interaction when they retire. So something we talk about with people when you're going into retirement, what's the plan? Because the plan isn't just golf every day or fish every day. I mean, I would tell someone I'm going to fish every day. Mm-hmm. Eventually, I'm going to get lonely on my boat every day. I can only catch so many crappies and so many bass before I'm like, man, where are the people around me? Seriously. So have a way to establish some new relationships. Maybe it's volunteering.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people during this phase, their identity changes. Maybe they're in this management job or, they were looked up to by peers and people relied on them. Mm-hmm. Well, they retire and transition, and for some people, there's nobody looking up to them. I see this happen with teachers a lot. Teachers that retire kind of lose the sense of identity because for years they've been working with kids and those kids respect them and see these teachers as role models and they see themselves as like coaches, not just teaching kids the facts, but just kind of the way of life.
Yeah.
And when they retire, they feel a little lost. And my dad's a teacher. He retired, but came back as a professor emeritus at a college. And he did that because he still wanted to have a sense of meaning and he really liked the kids. And once that goes away for people, sometimes the transition to retirement isn't always the greatest.
Yeah, they lose their bearings a little bit, and that's why it's important to make sure you say to give yourself time, but also work with a financial professional because it's more than just the dollars and cents. It's about having somebody there who can help you and can answer the questions that you have because you deal with this on a regular basis and you deal with it every day with clients from all different walks of life, Roger.
Every day. We have clients that are 20 years old. We have clients who are 90 years old. We work with all of them, and we have to figure out how to craft plans for each individual's, specific situation to help them make the appropriate decisions for their future.
That's right, because now we're in the big decision phase, too. You get through the honeymoon phase, but it's also sort of concurrently you make your way into the big decision phase. A lot of things that happen when you make it to retirement.
Yeah, lots of decisions. Should I move to a different climate? How am I going to get around? What am I going to do when I'm older? Like, am I going to go to assisted living? Am I going to live in a retirement community? If I'm not working, what am I going to do with my time? Who am I going to hang out with? A lot of people even call this like the FOMO phase, the fear of missing out.
Yeah.
Like I mean, think about it. You retire, you might have 10,000 days in retirement. The question you should be asking yourself is, of these 10,000 days, when and how many are the most quality days?
Right.
And typically it's going to be day one through a day in the future. I mean, unfortunately, as humans, two things happen.
Yeah.
We typically don't get healthier as we get older, and our memory typically doesn't get better.
Yeah.
So I think, in this big decision phase, it's what am I going to do with my time? What am I going to do with my finances? You have to decide what you're doing for insurance. I mean, there are lots of decisions that have to be made that people just haven't even thought about.
And you know what? You could try to do this on your own, but the whole thing is if you don't have the time, if you don't have the skill, if you don't have the desire to go in there, that's a lot of heavy lifting, where if you have a wealth advisor, that really can help you out because they're the ones that can give you, they're like a coach, okay? You work with them to execute the game plan, but they've been through this before. The coach has been, Coach Roger, you've been through this before.
Doug, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So one of the things we do is we raise questions for people to have them think about it. You know, most people, even myself, I don't know everything. Most people, individuals out there, don't know everything about retiring. So we help raise questions. We're provocative. We try to have them think out things really well. And I've said it for a long time. You don't have to use an advisor, and you will get a result.
A result.
You'll get a result.
Yeah.
That is true. You don't have to have an advisor. You'll get a result. The question is, do you want a better or more optimal result? Right? I mean, if I cut my foot, I could do my own stitches. That's a result. Or I could call my buddy who's a foot surgeon and do it right. Yeah. We all have choices. So it's totally true. But as we go through this phase, this is the phase that we try to get people to envision. About a year ago, Molly at the office had prepared an outline. It was talking about having a vision board, not just monetarily, just like what you want to do.
Right.
So this year, my wife and I did a vision board because most people, we kind of gravitate towards the flavor of the month. Like, oh, it's vacation time. I think we should have a vacation house.
Yeah.
And then, oh, wait, we've been on a bunch of vacations. Maybe we want a new house. So I told my wife, I said, here's the deal. Write down the 10 things you want to accomplish in the next 10 years. And that'll help keep us on track. If people went into retirement, sat down and said, what are the 10 things I want to accomplish in retirement? It would make it a lot easier to figure out what their financial plan would look like, but also how we're going to accomplish these things.
Right.
Because what you don't want to do is, retire at 65 and 15 years later,
you're out of money.
Well, not only out of money, just out of lifestyle, meaning you're not walking as well, you're not getting around as well, your memory's not as good, and you have 15 things left on your board, and you haven't hit one. Because there's always a reason. Just think about life.
Oh.
Everybody on here.
Roger.
Everybody, think about this. Everybody on the show right now that has kids.
Yeah.
When you had your kids, was it convenient?
No.
No, it wasn't convenient. No. I mean, my wife and I, we waited 9 years because it wasn't convenient. Finally, well, we better, do this or not.
Yeah.
We were married 14 years before we had our first kid. 14 years.
Right.
Because it wasn't convenient.
There's a lot of things that you have to do. I mean, in life, there's a lot of decisions that you have to make that come down to this big decision phase, including health and well-being, caring for your parents, having yourself cared for with insurance when you get older and things like that. But preparing for the big decision phase, really what it comes down for me is that I could try to do it on my own, or I could lean on the financial professional, the wealth advisor that I have, because they've walked through this with people for years. They've done this for years, so why not go ahead and do that?
Well, we're fortunate we're a larger firm, and we've worked with thousands of clients, so we're able to pull from so many different scenarios and lean on the experience of others that have been through this, if somebody hasn't, that we're able to really help people navigate the big decision phase.
Roger Abel with Premier Investments and Wealth Management here on Talk Radio 1190, 1190talkradio.com. I'm Doug Wagner here, and I'm just a foil because this guy's the expert, and he's got the people who can help you understand this. We're talking about the 4 phases of retirement. We've been through the honeymoon and the big decision phases. Now it's the navigating longevity phase. This is a part where things start to, if you don't prepare, things can start to come apart. Let's liken it to NASCAR. If you've got a vehicle halfway through the race that you haven't done a proper tire change, or if you haven't taken the strip off of the front of the grill in order to make sure that everything's cooling right, that car is going to start to come apart. If you don't take care of yourself at some point during this, the navigating longevity phase is going to get pretty difficult, which is why it's nice to have a financial professional like you on your side.
Yeah, all I can think about when you said NASCAR and changing tires.
What?
Cole Trickle,
Yeah.
Days of Thunder, perfectly matched set of tires.
Yeah.
Right? There's not going to be a perfectly matched set of tires for
Right.
this phase. In fact, the longevity phase, things get complicated, right? Complexity increases in this phase because, man, you got to figure out, what prescriptions am I on? Where do I go for this? How many doctors do I have? Think about this. People 80 to 84 take on average 18 prescriptions per year.
Wow.
Think about that. 18.
Yeah.
18. So we mentioned memory doesn't get better. How do you remember to take these? I mean, people in retirement have to set up an entirely different process just to try to keep their health going.
Yeah.
What also gets more complicated? Do you think medical care and paperwork's easy?
Oh, no.
Oh, now you get to deal with insurance companies?
Oh.
Awesome. I mean, the complexity just goes up. And the earlier you plan for this, the better it's going to be. And some of that comes down to just having like a proper estate planning documents.
Right.
Who's your durable power of attorney? Who's your medical power of attorney? Do you have your trust sub? Do you have your will set up? All of those different things. The time to handle it is not when we're planning for longevity. It's 20 years before. So these plans are all put into place.
And the nice thing, though, Roger, is that with Premier Investments and Wealth Management, they're still flexible enough. They're not in iron or in steel or in stone. This is stuff that it's there, but you can take it out of that iron, stone, or steel box and still change it as things goes along because, you know what, maybe your partner has an issue. Medical or health issue. Maybe you start having a medical or health issue, or maybe it's something where you're doing just fine after the age of 75 and you're experiencing more lifestyle than you expected. So you can still take that and deal with this. But being prepared for it is what's critical, and that's what you help people do.
It's really what we help. Everything we do revolves around being prepared. Revolves around a goal, a process, being prepared. I think of people that are process-oriented. They accomplish great results. And this is a process, right? It is a process of, hey, I'm taking responsibility because I want to get help doing this. I'm going to prove to you, I know that process-oriented people get great results. Do you know what the third profession that kicks out the most millionaires are in the United States?
What's that?
Teachers.
Oh, yeah.
Teachers.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Right.
They're process-oriented people.
Yeah.
The number one is engineers. It's about as process-oriented as it gets.
Nice to have a son. I call him my little 401k. So
Yeah. Guess what? It's not. It's not doctors. Not that
Right.
they're not process-oriented people, but they're big thinkers, right? So just having a process for all of these different phases of life, it's going to get you a much better result than just trying to wing it and figure it out. And listen, none of this stuff in this phase preparing for is fun.
Yeah.
It's like I just went and had to update all of my estate planning documents because I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old now. And I put it off for like a year because I don't want to talk about dying. I don't want
Right.
to talk about who's going to take care of my kids, and it's just not comfortable.
Yeah.
This is stuff that you can't put off. And I'm 45 and I wanted to put off, but I still did it. I know people who are 65 who haven't done any of this stuff. I have a good friend of mine. Full disclosure, he's not a client. Single, no family. Brother's dead, never been married, no kids. He has a very good friend who's what we call his conservator or going to handle his affairs.
Right.
He had a stroke. He's in his early 60s. Friend calls me up, says, hey, this person has some investments at this place. What can I do? I said, well, do you have a power of attorney to do anything? No. I said, you need to go get conservatorship. There's nothing you can do to help him.
Right.
Guess what he did as soon as he got out of the hospital? He has all his docs in line.
Yeah.
But think about that. If he would have been there for 6 months, there's nobody to help with his financial affairs. And going through the court system is not an easy system to navigate through.
Right. There's so many complexities. This is why it makes sense to have a wealth advisor who's on your side, somebody to assist you because, you know what? It's more than just the dollars and cents. It's more than just about the investments. It's making sure that you have a plan that's executable and it's flexible enough for you. The final portion of this is the solo journey phase. We're talking with Roger Abel enroll here in the Premier Investments and Wealth Management Financial Program. PremierIWM.com is where you find out more information. But the fourth phase of retirement is the solo journey phase. I do have a friend of mine who passed away. He was in his, late 80s, and he was an attorney. So he left his wife very well prepared. Every I was dotted, every T was crossed. But at the same time, that's a phase where people react to it two different ways. It can be freeing to some people so that they fly, and then the other way it can be where they miss their special someone in their life, their partner, that everything starts to fall apart around them. You need to be prepared for both of these.
This is kind of the sad phase. And this isn't like, hey, I'm going to a nursing home phase. This is just, I'm living alone.
Right.
And the reality for most people, at some point as we age, we are going to live alone. Mm-hmm. In fact, 43% of women over age 75 are living alone, 24% of men.
Yeah.
We just give up as men. Mm-hmm. The women always outlive us.
Yeah.
That's just what happens. But you just think about it. Loneliness sets in. And this is actually harder to prepare for. Like, this is the one I'm not sure you can prepare as much for because there's a lot of unknowns. And you just have to envision yourself and say, okay, if I'm living alone in 20 years, what can I do today so that I'm not lonely in 20 years? If you want to be around people.
Right.
Some people are just happy being alone. Like, I have a friend, he's like, I'm never going to be married. I got a dog. I'm going to fish. I don't need to be around people. Some people are that way.
You think about this is that you talked a little bit earlier about you're in these rubrics that you've set up since you were 5 years old, and then you have to change for that next 10,000 days or that 30 years roughly. And then you're partway through that 10,000 days, and everything that you changed from age 5 to age whatever is changed then again, because now you're not responsible to anybody. You're not accountable to anybody. You don't have anybody to walk with you along that journey. I think that's when the advice becomes most important, Roger.
For sure. And I think a lot of people underestimate the effects of loneliness. Mm-hmm. So this is from MIT Age Lab. So once again, people way smarter than me. Loneliness can be as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Molly, who helps put together the outlines, told me that. I'm like, that can't be possible. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Try smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
No,
Roger.
do not do it. But I mean, it just shows the toll that being lonely can take on people. Mm-hmm. And, just because you're alone doesn't mean it's over, but it goes back to one of the core principles we talk to people about early on before they retire.
Right.
What's going to be my sense of community? Mm-hmm. Is it church? Am I volunteering? And some of the things we don't see as important when we're 60 and 65 and 70 or even 45 become more important later. I mean, I would jokingly tell people I have like 3 friends. Mm-hmm. I have a bunch of acquaintances.
Right.
But I have 3 friends. Well, if I don't get good social circles of people as I age,
right,
I'm not going to have any because they're both older than me.
Exactly. It makes sense to do that. Premier Investments and Wealth Management. Go to PremierIWM.com, click Get Started, and find out more about the Premier Vision document. It's more than just, am I ready for retirement? What it's about is making sure that you have a lifestyle that reflects every season of your life, whether you're a first-time parent who's trying to buy that first house, all the way to you lost your spouse, you lost your partner, now you're living a life alone. They can help you walk this journey and walk it responsibly with their Premier Vision document. PremierIWM.com. Thank you for listening. Talk Radio 1190 and on 1190talkradio.com. For Roger Abel and Premier Investments and Wealth Management, I'm Doug Wagner. We'll talk to you next week, everybody.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. The opinions voiced in this show are for general information purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Premier Investments and Wealth Management and LPL Financial do not provide tax advice. Please consult your tax professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance referenced is historical and is not a guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal.